So this is going to be it's raining outside, it's cold, lots of stuff. There's a lot of really down, low energy on campus, it feels like. So what we're going to do in here is I'm going to talk. I'm going to just talk the entire class. And if you have a question or you want to make a comment, you can raise your hand and someone will get the microphone to you. But I'm going to talk. And I'm just going to stay right at the table here. I'm not going to run around. I'm not going to try to keep you awake. I'm not going to try to do any number of things. I'm going to talk about something that I think is really, really worth talking about. And there's not much that I think is really worth talking about, from me anyway, but I don't know, I'm really going to give myself to this. Like, I'm going to tell you Wait, hang on a sec, though. Yo, hang on. So here's how this is going to work. I promise you I will actually go into my mind and pull out what I can about this topic, and I'll give you a perspective. But the only way for me to do that, to really give you something that's actually worth listening to, the only way for me to do that is to have you all pay attention. And I know it's difficult, but I promise you I'll give you the best that I can, but you gotta pay attention. Like, you can't be distracted and you can't talk. And then I'll go there, okay? And the title is Tragedy of the Commons. And we're going to talk about climate change and climate collapse. And it's not a very uplifting subject, but I'm going to give you a perspective through which you can see this sociologically, and I don't want you to leave here feeling depressed and down and negative and hopeless and all of those things. There's no intention of that, but I do want you to think in more complex ways about a really, really what I think is a profoundly important issue. In fact, I think it's very, very possible it's the most profoundly important issue that human beings have ever confronted. And I think most of us have a suspicion that that's true, and that it may be true, that it may be the most profoundly important issue that human beings have ever confronted. But because it's so big and the potential outcome is so depressing, it's really easy for us to put our heads in the sand and not pay attention. And I'm going to make the argument that actually, by contrast, it's worth paying attention to, not because it may not be true, but because it's worth paying attention to. Because we're human beings and we think, and we want to be thoughtful. We want to be smarter tomorrow than we were today. And I don't have answers, but I have some ways of framing what I think are the issues that may well be coming at us. And if they are, it's really, really big. And the more you think about it, the more we think about it, the more we will be prepared to really deal with the issues that are coming at us. So remember, this is a perspective. Tragedy of the commons. Okay? Let me explain what I mean by that. It's an idea that emerges. By the way, this is just me talking. Okay, I'm just going to talk. This is a really weird, the last time I sat on this desk and talked for a whole class was probably 12 years ago. Like I don't like to do it, in part because I don't think I have anything really that important to say, and because it's just not interesting, because I'd rather hear from you. But I'm going to do it today. So here, the tragedy of the commons is a really fascinating idea that's built around human group behavior that stands in contrast to or in conflict with individual self-interest. So always individuals may have self-interest, meaning it may benefit us to act in certain ways, that if everybody acted in that way, a system would collapse. So the first idea that this came to was this guy, I think it was in the 19th century, and he said, look, imagine a field this big, and imagine that there are 4 people who each own one sheep, and that sheep can graze in the grass of this field. And if everybody owns one sheep, and that sheep is more or less the same size and eats more or less the same amount of grass, and they put that sheep out there every single day, then those 4 people will do fine. They will survive with that one sheep. They're not going to gain more nor less than their neighbors, than their 3 other neighbors. But there's always a risk of one person sneaking another sheep out into the field to say, hey, if I can survive with the one sheep, if I have 2 sheep, then I'll get more because I'll have 2 sheep. So if I'm getting the wool from the sheep or the milk from the sheep, I'll have a little bit more, and I can advance my own individual interests. But the problem is the field is only big enough for 4 sheep. And so if there are 5 sheep, the field will begin to collapse over time. And if 2 people get the idea to have more than one sheep, it'll collapse even faster. And if it's just left to the devices of everybody to decide what they want to do, individuals will not think about the long-term consequences of their actions, and they will just all get a shit ton of sheep, and they'll stick the sheep out in the field, and the whole field will collapse very, very quickly, and then everybody's going to say, oh my God, now all we can do is eat our sheep, and now we've eaten our sheep, and now we have nothing. We have no way to make an income. We have no way to get ahead. We have nothing. And so things collapse. And so everybody is harmed because the individual actors did not come together to say, hey, let's look at what is going on here, and let's all come together and make a plan and a promise that we are only going to put 4 sheep in that field. The tragedy of the commons. The commons is the field, and the tragedy is that individuals will all too often make individual assessments or individual decisions that benefit them but harm the community and ultimately harm themselves. It's like peeing in your own bathtub. Like, yeah, it's okay, but in the end, it's like, come on, man. In the end, if you keep peeing in your own bathwater over time, like if you just keep doing it day after day after day, it's a problem, okay? I don't think that's a really good analogy, but you know what I mean, right? Okay. So, here's the deal. I don't have a lot of faith in average people. I don't think average people are dumb. I just think average people don't think a lot about really complex issues, in part because we're not taught to think about complex issues, because we are taught to dislike school. School is drudgery. School is something we have to go to. School is something where you go and memorize, and it's nothing that unless you go to some kind of Quaker school or alternative school, or maybe you're homeschooled and you have really cool parents, but by and large, unless you happen to have a few really cool teachers, but by and large, school is not something that we aspire to do. It's work, and very few people want to actually do it. And so I don't have a lot of faith in average people, just like myself. I only started to think, like really think, when I was 20 years old. When I decided I wanted to understand the world. And then it took me many, many, many years to really begin to understand the world. And I'm only just now feeling like I'm starting to understand it, and I'm 59 years old. And the tragedy of human life is if you work your tail off your whole life to really try to understand, just to grow, to be prepared to live. Like to know what the meaning of life and the value of life and what it's all about. If you work really, really hard, it's going to take you about 50 or 60 or 70 years. And by that time, you're ready to die. And life is evil, my friends, in that sense, that by the time you're ready to live, you're ready to die. I'm just now to the place where I feel like I'm starting to live. And so, the reason this photo up here is because if I said to you, hey, I want to buy a jet, and my jet's going to cost $56 million, but here's the deal. I'm going to travel around the world, and I'm going to talk about Social 119, and I'm going to take my stream team, and I'll take a few of you, but I really need the jet, and I can't go on a commercial airline because I just can't. And listen, you need to give me money so I can buy my $50 million jet. You all would think I'm crazy, and you wouldn't give me a dime. But somehow, these televangelists find ways to get people to give them millions and millions of dollars to buy jet airplanes so they can travel around the world. Because, as this dude said, this guy right there, Jesse, said, when I'm in a regular airplane, even if I'm flying first class, there are demons on that plane, and there's bad energy on that plane, and I need my own private jet. And people give them the money. And the fact that people give them the money depresses the shit out of me because I think people are really dumb. But they're not dumb. They just do something. I don't know why, because they think they're going to get closer to Jesus. Because Creflo Dollar is saying, like, give me the money so I can have the jet and somehow you'll be closer to God. So I think, like, oh, this is human beings we're dealing with. The tragedy of the commons. I do not have a lot of faith that human beings acting on their own interests are going to address the climate change issue if it's really there and if it's coming at us. Because these are the people that are giving money here, man. It's like politics. You understand what politics is? All we're doing in the elections is taking the people in the middle who are not paying attention and try to get them to move in this direction or move in this direction. They're not paying attention. They don't know what's going on. It's too complex to know what's going on. It's so immensely complex. So all you got to do is just use emotion and something else and little, spontaneous arguments, and the Republicans do it and the Democrats do it, and whether it's Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump or Elizabeth Warren or the Clintons or Biden or anybody, right? They're just trying to get inside of people's heads who don't understand the issues, but they're just trying to move them here and move them there. And that's what our entire system is built on. The tragedy of the commons. Got it? I personally think, if you want to know my own personal opinion, we'd be much better if we had a really smart, benevolent king. The system would be much better. But we don't, and so we deal with what we have. All right, so now we're going to come back here. These are advertisements from when I was just born. More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Look at this, smoking. It's good for you, man. Everybody smoked. Everybody had ashtrays in their houses. My parents didn't smoke. We had ashtrays in our living rooms and in our dining rooms, and my God, I will never forget the smell of that. Here, this is Ronald Reagan. He's one of our former presidents, and said, "Gee, Dad, you always get the best of everything, even Marlboro." It's like, whoa, the pleasant aftertaste. Look at this, right? This is crazy. You can't even imagine that today. So here, 98%. 98% of researchers who study this issue make the claim that if you smoke tobacco, it will very likely shorten your life and lead to heart disease. Not 100%, 98%. And in part that's because they're doing really good science. Because if you're doing really good science, you never arrive at a conclusion, you never prove anything, you never know for certain. Scientists never prove an hypothesis. They never accept an hypothesis. They fail to reject the hypothesis because if you're doing science, you know you never get to the answer. We don't know, for example, that gravity will always work. If we're being true to the scientific method, it's like, yeah, well, okay, gravity, there's the law of gravity, but we're still working it. We don't know. Things could change. Everything's happened. You fail to reject a hypothesis. Scientists never use the word prove. And so maybe the 98% are saying, you know what? I don't know. Yeah, it looks like it certainly is going to... If you smoke cigarettes, you will very likely increase your risk of heart disease and cancer, absolutely. But I don't know, I'm a good scientist. I can't say that 100% for certain. Or maybe they're funded by the tobacco industry. Okay? Climate change. What percentage of people who study the issue say, hey, in all likelihood, human beings are, hey, by the way, no, human beings are having an impact on the environment that if we don't curtail our and if we do not curtail our carbon emissions, it's very likely, again, not to lead to heart disease and cancer, but it's very likely to have a devastating impact on life on Earth. Very likely. What's the number? We don't know what the number is. People throw out there's this number that goes around of 97%, but that's just the number of people who publish in peer-reviewed journals. 97% are saying, like, yes, there's no question about it. But we don't know. It may be that those are just the journal articles that get accepted. So the ones who are saying, I don't really think that that's not the case. But, yeah, okay, so let me do my research and let me submit my article to the journal. And then the journal editorial board says, oh, well, this is bunk. This person is saying climate change isn't happening, it's not real, so therefore we reject it. Maybe some of that's going on. But what I will say is the number is very, very high. It's very high. And I've been privileged to have one-on-one conversations with some of the smartest climate scientists in the world. And sit down and have a conversation with them, tell me what's going on and what you are seeing, and tell me about your research, and I'm blown away. And this thing right here, this blue dot, is immensely complex. So it used to be that this is science. It used to be that it was called global warming because people said, hey, what's going to happen is you're going to have these CO2 emissions, they're going to be in the atmosphere, and the Earth is going to heat up. And then we started watching things, and we said, well, hang on a second. But there are these feedback loops. It's not just the Earth is going to heat up. There are feedback loops. So the Earth's going to heat up overall, and in some places it's going to heat up, but in other places it's actually going to get colder. We're going to have high heat spells and cold spells, and we're going to have flooding, and we're going to have drought, and we're going to have all these things, and it's all going to happen. But overall, the temperature of the Earth, the atmosphere, the oceans, the temperature of the Earth is going to rise, and what's going to happen is sea levels are going to rise. And they're going to rise for any number of reasons. Okay? So, we say, this is amazingly complex. And these are really, really, really smart people. And I will tell you that most scientists, and once again, I'm not one of them. I'm not one of the smart people. But I have the opportunity to rub shoulders with really smart people. And I will say that most people who do science, including sociology, are trying to do it really well. And we're trying to get to the answers. And we're not manipulating, and we're not trying to use our ideology to come out front. We're really trying to get there. We're going to try to figure it out. So, what we see is the people who study climate science, who really focus on climate science, those who dedicate their lives all over the world to climate science, they're the ones when we ask, hey, what's your agreement about human-caused global climate change? And what's your thoughts about whether it's going to have a devastating impact on life on Earth? And the more they study climate science, I'm not talking about engineering, I'm not talking about all these other biology, physics, all these other, the ones that dedicate themselves to that. The more they dedicate themselves, the more it's like, yeah, man. The more I look into it, the more I'm seeing like, whoa, we got to think about this. Now, I think that many of you have a sense of this. And I think that many of you are like me, if not most of you, if not nearly all of you are like me. I read the headlines and I read a story and I read this and I'm just like, I don't want to look at that. I want to turn away. I don't want to believe it. And I'm going to be 60 years old. I don't have kids. I had nothing to lose. I don't need another job. I want to retire. Y'all are looking to get jobs and make money and have a house and have a cell phone that works. And like you know what I'm looking for? I'm looking for a nice, quiet retirement. And I don't need much. The hotter it is, it's like, that's cool. I'll just move north or I'll go wherever. Sea level rise, that's cool. I'll just go inland. I got enough. I'm good to go. And I don't want to pay attention to it. This is me. This is me, the person who's like feeling, whoa, I got this. I don't have kids. You know what it's like to not have kids? It's like the most amazing thing in the world that I'm not responsible for anybody. And I sit every morning, my wife and I have coffee, and we talk for an hour. And every evening, I will go home after class tonight. We will sit in these two chairs facing each other as we do every single night, and we will have a beer. And we will talk about life, and we will share our experiences of the day. We'll talk about our hopes, our dreams, and what we're going to do. And then that's it. I don't worry about anybody. It's her and it's me. And I do not like to read any of the headlines. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to imagine it. I just turn myself away. But the problem, and so some people can say, yeah, well, that's these people, but they don't really know. And they're getting rich off, all these climate scientists are getting rich off what they're doing, and they're just making up data. They don't have any. Listen, man, some people can say that. I can't say that, because the truth is, I know enough of them, and I've read enough, and I've been around the world, and I've seen things, and I'm talking to people, and I'm like, yo, man, I wish I could just box it away and say, maybe that's not really happening, but I can't. And so now I say, what do I got to do with this? And that's what we're doing here today. Look, 1912. This is actually a newspaper from New Zealand. New Zealand. It says coal consumption will affect the climate. Burning coal tends to make air more effective blanket for the earth and to raise its temperature. This effect may be considerable in a few centuries. You're thinking about a long time ago. The oil companies were thinking about climate science a long time ago. It's now coming out that Exxon and Chevron and one after another all were saying 30 years ago, 40 years ago in the 70s, saying like, yo, this is probably really serious and we need to really be thinking about it. Meanwhile, telling the American public, this is bullshit, this is not real, don't think about it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But behind scenes, all this is out now. It comes out, it's like, yeah, behind scenes, they're all thinking about how they're going to respond to the changing climate that they were predicting, this person, in 1912. So we're not talking, this is going way back. These are hypotheses. Again, nothing's ever proven. This is science. You prove nothing with science. You fail to reject the hypothesis. So, for example, if I say, hey, if I lift this table up and put it on my back, I hypothesize that I'm going to throw my back out and I'm going to be in trouble. And I do it, and I don't say, oh, I reject my hypothesis. No, I fail to accept my hypothesis because I got to do it again. And I got to do it again and again and again. And I just keep doing it. I never accept the hypothesis. That's what's going on here. The fact that somebody said it in 1912 means nothing. It just means that they were thinking about the mechanisms. Okay, so listen. This is a list of major organizations that I have compiled that accept that human beings are having an impact on the environment, and if we do nothing, it's very liable to be absolutely devastating to life on Earth. Look at that. Look at this. You know, the Navy has plans to move all of its Navy bases inland. You know what I mean? You want to go to the Navy and say, like, oh, you guys are ridiculous. You're really crazy. Come on, are you kidding me? Navies all over the world are saying we're going to have to close our bases. Right now, Norfolk, Virginia is really dealing with this. This is the most important Navy base probably in the United States. They're dealing with it. It's like, what are we going to do? The CIA, the NSA, NATO, the 10 largest oil companies outside the United States, every major insurance company in the world. So I can bury my head, but I don't want to bury my head because like these people are saying this is actually real. So now, again, the class is not going to depress you. Don't allow yourself to be depressed. Being depressed is not where you want to be. You want to be smart. You want to think about it. You want to understand what's going on. Don't be depressed. That's like a dumb reaction. Like, I'm not depressed. Come on, man. Even if I live another 50 years, even if I had kids, it's like, well, whatever. We're going to work it out. We're not going to work it out. I mean, we're going to respond. But it's like, okay. These are actually kind of exciting times, to be honest. All right, so listen. Chinese government. The Chinese are not known to play around with manipulation when it comes to certain things like this. The Chinese government pulled together 550 of their top Earth scientists. They put together a 900-page report, and that was their conclusion. This is like, whoa, hang on a second. Right? So, you're going to start seeing, I start reading headlines like this, right? Most powerful storm. Most devastating drought, most brutal cold spell, most extensive rainfall, the hottest recorded, then you follow it up. And I'm reading more of it, and I will tell you, some of that is the media, because hyperbole and hype and fear sells. Remember, what you see in the media is what is rare. Murders are rare. That's why they lead. Every time there's a murder, it's the top story, because it rarely happens. People rarely get carjacked or robbed on the Penn State campus. But if somebody gets robbed on the Penn State campus, especially like if it's Knife Point or something, trust me, it is news all over central Pennsylvania because it almost never happens. Children rarely get kidnapped. These things, they just don't happen. And so what you see leading the news, we say, oh, the media is all about fear. No. They're about reporting things that rarely happen. And it turns out the things that rarely happen are often really negative things. Sometimes it's positive things, like someone wins the Powerball lottery. I don't know. It's like, yeah, that's pretty rare, I guess. You can figure out how to pull the correct balls out. Okay, got it? However, I will tell you this. I'm a skeptic. I'm the person who, in my circle of friends and colleagues, I'm always the one that's going, yeah, come on. You're blowing it out of proportion. Come on. It's like the cell phone, right? Oh, my God. All my Luddite friends, it's like, oh, cell phones, they're really ruining communication between people. I'm the one that's going, are you kidding me? This is improving communication between people. My students are better communicators today, even interpersonally, because of the cell phone. Oh, what do you mean? And everyone's on this team They're all over here. Everybody. It's like, oh, this is really bad. And I'm the lone voice over here going like, come on, y'all are crazy. No. Come on. It's good. It's better. It's not like that. It's okay. So I'm that person. And I will tell you that I am seeing more and more, not only of the headlines, but then I go down in the headlines because I'm always skeptical of headlines. And I read more. And I will just say, not only in the United States, but everywhere I go in the world. And I ask people, I'm like, hey man, so you guys got a drought here, in Haiti. Or something going on in St. Petersburg. You guys got flooding in St. Peter. I was in St. Petersburg, Russia. So you guys got flooding here. But it floods a lot here. Nah, it floods, but you never have flooding like this. Ever. What do you mean never? Is that just what your friends say? Everybody says, because, everybody's like, everyone just wants to repeat, not everybody, but a lot of us want to repeat the bad news. It's like, no. No, we've never had flooding like this, ever, recorded. I'm like, oh, okay. Then I'm, in Colombia, right, and there's a drought. Or in Haiti, and there's a drought. And it's like, yeah, okay. Or there's a heat wave. It's like, okay, I got the heat wave, but it's always hot in Haiti. Come on, man, I've been to Haiti 10 times. It's like, it's hot. It's always hot. No, hang on. This is different. It's like, look at the data. It's there. So wherever I go, I'm seeing, whoa. It's like, this is actually, we are seeing more of it. You don't know that because you've only been paying attention for a short amount of time, but I've been paying attention now for 35 years. And I'm noticing things. And so this is anecdotal, right? So you got the climate scientists that are all saying, look, we're running the numbers, and here's what we're seeing, and we're seeing it in all these different ways. And then anecdotally, I'm over here going, yeah, actually, I'm kind of noticing that everywhere I go in the world, someone's got they're setting records for the environmental change, records, everything. I'm like, okay, hang on. All right, what do we do with that? Okay? Now, by the way, so some people respond. Here's the Chinese response. They said, okay, in 2006, we've got 100 megawatts of solar power. And see, China can do this because China has this sort of hierarchical top-down system, whereas the people at the top simply say, this is what we're doing. Like, we're going to build we're going to redirect this river from this right over here to over here. Yeah, but if we do it over here, we're going to destroy the houses of 40 million people. And in the United States, you could never do that. In China, it's just like, oh, it doesn't matter. That's what we're doing. We have to do this. There are certain things that can get done if it's a top-down system. So the Chinese, they went from 100 megawatts, and now this year it's 130 gigawatts. India is looking by 2022 to get to 177 gigawatts. People are responding. So people all over the world are responding, and the climate scientists are saying, hey, we can respond. It's not too late. I mean, it may be too late. It may be that the system will just get off kilter because systems do that. They can be a little bit off kilter. You ever spin a top, and the top, you spin it and it starts to go bad a little bit. It's like a little bit off. And then suddenly it just reaches a certain point where it just really collapses. Well, that's how systems are. But, we can pull this out. We can certainly do our best. That's for sure. And, the Chinese government, the Indian government, the United States too. So Donald Trump just announced 2 days ago that we're pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords. So the entire world signed off on the Paris Climate Accords except for 2 countries. I think it was Nicaragua and I forget who else, but inconsequential, right? So President Trump has decided, hey, you know what? Next year, it'll be the day after the election in the United States, we're pulling out. Well, that's fine. It doesn't matter. Because, remember this? See that? They're not pulling out. You know what I mean? The United States isn't pulling out. This is also the United States. And some not in the United States. And they're not pulling out. So it doesn't matter. Just want to say that, by the way. So this is Tiananmen Square in China. Look at this. This is Smog. This is India. This is just a couple days ago. Look at these look like they could be Penn State students. I had a photo I was going to show of a classroom. Everybody in the classroom that was from Delhi. And I was in Delhi when the smog was, there were not smog alerts. 2 times. It was bad, but there were no smog alerts. And it's like, damn, imagine everyone on campus wearing masks. This is serious. Right? Now, let me just back off a little bit and say something. In case you're feeling some kind of way, take a look at Saturn. Pretty awesome. You ever just pull your phones out and look at photos of space? Is that not awesome? Beautiful? Like, oh my God. So here's what's up. Take a look at that. So here's Saturn. And look at that. See that right there? That's the Earth. We're pretty inconsequential. Now, you may have religious ideologies, religious beliefs that puts us at the center of life, but the universe is pretty massive. And from the perspective of the universe, we're pretty inconsequential. So all of this is worth looking at from lots of different directions. It's like, yeah, okay. We're not going to destroy life. Life will never be destroyed. Life is what life is. Things just change. And in case you've never seen one of these photos, just to put it in perspective of what we're talking about here, we have about, it's estimated, nobody knows, we have no idea. I love these astrophysicists that come up with these really precise projections, right? It's estimated. It's about 100 billion galaxies, more or less. And every galaxy has about 100 billion stars, like our sun. And every star, increasing in what we're finding, are all these planets that are floating around. The world is massive. It's massive. You can't even just begin to comprehend. We're talking about something that's happening here in the context of this. Hundreds of billions. So 100 billion times 100 billion. So put it in perspective when we think about who we are and what we are. These are the questions. If you don't just sit with that for a second to say, whoa, if we don't do that, we're not alive. Okay, we may, so here's one. I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it because I have to. Pay attention. Dude, are you depressed? Do you feel depressed? Do you feel hopeless? No. Do you feel hopeless? All right, good. Don't feel hopeless. Like if you feel hopeless, it's like, it's not a response you want to have. You want to have an aware response. We want to have a thinking response. We're talking about the 6th grade extinction right now. In the past decade, the estimate is that we've lost 41% of all insects on Earth. Dudes, in the past decade, the fuck? 41%. And 22% of invertebrates. Dude, dude, are we paying it? Do I have your imagination now? See, it's really cool to watch the Penn State football game on Saturday. See how they're going to win, how they're going to do, all this stuff, right? But this stuff is also really cool. Because this is also the future. It's like, what do we do? How are we going to do it? What decisions am I going to make? How am I going to live? How am I going to wake up every day? What kinds of things am I going to do? How am I going to engage? This is huge. Okay, so here's where the sociology comes in. We are having already really serious social transformations that are taking place. We always have. Things change, systems change. You have climates, you have flooding, you have all sorts of things that happen. You have fires, you have this, you have that. And no one event, by the way, you can't look at the fires in California and say, oh, this is climate change. It's like, no. No one event. It's not about that. That's simplistic. You don't think that. No one who's worth their salt, who's thinking about this, is ever saying that. That's something that like media people say, and that's something that people say who aren't really thinking seriously about this. So there's no one event. But one thing that we know is we've always had all sorts of kind of climate emergencies and changes that take place, whether it's war or some kind of drought or some kind of devastation or any number of things, right? Just the seeds that really produced really well in this particular area at this point in time suddenly just don't produce anymore. And so now we got a lot of starvation, and people leave there by the thousands or tens of thousands, and they go somewhere else. And this is just how it is. We've cut down all the trees in this area, and so we've deforested, and so we got to respond in some way. But we always have that. This happens to be Bangladesh. Bangladesh, if you know anything about Bangladesh, there's always flooding. Always, always, always. This is the nature of Bangladesh. It's low-lying land. It's Dhaka. It's estimated to be the largest city in the world by 2030. I just saw that the other day. There are always refugees, climate refugees, but they're like flooding refugees. It's yearly. It happens every year. But what we're seeing but it's happening more, and the flooding is worse. And it's flooding in places where it never flooded before, and it's flooding for longer. And so people are having a harder time. And you just see, like, look at this guy carrying the briefcase, and look at her. It's just like more and more. And I don't see it. We don't have it here, but this impacts us because it's going to impact us. It impacts everybody. Because the more we see, quote, climate refugees, the more the whole world is going to respond, and ultimately the more we're going to respond. And so here's Bangladesh also. This is a drought. Well, there's always drought. So you go from this to this. It's like, okay, got it. But here's the problem. The drought, they're lasting longer, more intense. There's droughts in places where people didn't have drought before. And so it used to be, okay, we go from the floods to the drought, but people were able to grow enough food, and enough people grew enough food that they could last and store the food, and it's all good. But now we have more. And there's less food. And there's more people. It's like, damn, look at this guy carrying a television set. I'm like, dude, where are you going with the television set? And a goat. You've seen this, right? This is from the Mediterranean, going into Europe. These are climate refugees. The vast majority, some people, it's because of poverty, flooding into Europe, flooding into other places, right? Sometimes it's poverty, some of it's war. But the poverty and the war is exacerbated by climate transformation. It's like, okay. So we see more. And what is it? Like, what is it that leads somebody here? See all these men here? What is it that leads someone what would lead you to get on a boat, risk your life? Most of them can't swim because they come from inland and they probably can't, I'm sure they can't swim. Not in these waters, they can't swim. What would it be for us, any of us, to get on a boat and risk our lives and go somewhere we've never been before and maybe, very likely, not survive? Maybe at least it's 50-50. And maybe have to take the last money we have and borrow money and go just to get somewhere that we probably aren't going to make anything happen. What to take? So you look at, what is this? And more. And Europe doesn't know what to do. They can't let everybody in. So you got all these boats, one after another, coming. You can't just let people in. It's not like open your borders. It's like, come on, man, I've been to Europe. There's not just space everywhere you need to go. You can't just do that. We can't do that in the United States. You can't just do it. But it's going to keep going. And if climate change unfolds, in the way that people are hypothesizing it will unfold, and we don't respond as quickly as we could respond, we will see more and more and more boatloads of people seeking something, anything. Because when you have nothing, you've been so hungry that you're just going to do whatever you need to do. Like, it doesn't matter. You do whatever you need to do to get what you need to get. So it's not going to stop. Here, let me give you a quick story here. So this I happen to know something about because someone who works for me is from this particular region in Guatemala. The Western Highlands. These are Guatemalan refugees who were stopped at the U.S. border. Okay? Young men, trying to do something better for their lives. I know quite a bit about this because I lived for a long time in Ecuador at a time when there was a lot of out-migration to the United States. I would go in communities where there were houses. I would go in a community where there were no men between the ages of about 14 and 60. None. Because they all left for the United States. It would be just communities of boys, of women and girls and young boys and old men. It's like, wow. They all just left. Because there's nothing. Like, there's nothing. Right? I was in one of these communities. I was with I could tell story after story. Just nothing, man. Like, the food's not growing. It's not growing as it has for hundreds of years, right? It's just they can't make it happen. Things change, things shift, right? And it's like, the first time I watched parents bring a malnourished child to the priest for its last rites, and then turn to me and say, can you do something? And I'm like, I can't do anything. And then the child dies, and you're just like, shit. And more. The idea is that we're going to see this. So here are these young men. So they're caught in the border. And here's where they come from. That's what it looks like in a good year. That's what it looks like. Got it? Corn, choclo. They're growing, it's called choclo in Guatemala. It's corn, it's big ears on the corn, and everything is about corn. You make, maíz, right? You make tortillas, and you eat it in lots of different ways, and soup, and so on, right? So it's the Western Highlands. That's what it looked like for the past 2 years. And how do I know that? Because I have sent money down to a family in Guatemala on 4 different occasions to keep them alive, who is somebody who works for me. I mean, some of my money, but also their money. Wiring it down. This family just happens to be really lucky that they have somebody in the United States. But if they didn't have somebody in the United States, be them. And maybe they get in. And then they get into the United States, and then they become the people who allow people to survive. But the drought in the Western Highlands region of Guatemala is a drought that everybody says, even the agronomists, has never, ever happened in human history. They have no record of anything like this ever happening. And look, and so we're already at a place where, in this Chimaltenango, it's called, 67% are living on, are considered by the UN to be extremely malnourished. So you're already extremely malnourished. Got it? Extremely malnourished. Okay, we good? Now you got that. What are you going to do? Where are you going? Where are you going to go? Al Norte. You're going to go to the United States. Of course you are. You're going to go somewhere. What are you going to do? You're going to just sit in your cornfields and die? No, you're not. You're going to do that. Now we got a whole system around the world that is changing fairly rapidly, and the climate scientists are saying, look, this stuff is not going to stop. It's just going to keep going. In some places it's going to be really quick. In other places it's going to be just a slow transformation. All the things that we predict to see is going to make life really, really difficult. We're going to see these large population movements all over the world, everywhere. People going in different places. So we're going to have to respond. So the question then becomes, how do you respond? You can't just look at these guys and say, okay, let's just open the borders. All of you come in. No, come in, because come on, you're poor. Just come in. We're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. But what kind of response are we going to have? Because it's not going away. So what kind of response are we going to have? What are you going to do? At what point are we going to say, well, hang on a second, right? So what do we do? How do we think about this? Dudes and dudettes, that's way above my pay grade. I have no idea how to think about it. It's way above my pay grade. I don't get paid enough, and I'm not smart enough. But all I know is that is never going to stop. We can build as many walls as we want all over the world. The Europeans can build walls, the Chinese, the Koreans, the Japanese, the Americans, the Mexicans, everybody can build walls, but that's not going to stop. And by all accounts, it's going to keep going. Here are the 10 countries most at risk as of a couple years ago. And these are countries that are already going underwater, and you can recognize that this is... Last year, I was just a year ago this month, I was in the Philippines and talking to climate scientists, hearing the same thing. Things that are happening that have never, ever happened, ever, in the history of the Philippines. Ethiopia, same thing. I was in Ethiopia talking to people about the change in the climate. It's like it never happened. And I'm curious, right? I'm not a climate scientist, so I'm a sociologist. I just want to know, like, okay, what's happening? And people responding. So here, this is the Marshall Islands. They're going to try to build a seawall. But I'm like, how are you going to build a seawall? And here, so these are Syrian refugees, right? So now look at those faces. Just look at the faces. Just pick a couple of people out and look at it. Cool? Got it? So 2 summers ago, Lori and I, my wife and I, took students to Greece. And we were in a little town in the north called, that's city actually, it's somewhat of a small city, called Kavala. And there's a refugee camp there. And so we said, hey, they're Syrians, let's go meet them. And let's go have a dialogue with them and our students. And so we were able to kind of negotiate with the camp, with the authorities, the Greek authorities, and we all came back to where we were staying. And so this is students and refugees, okay? So they are refugees, these two women here, this gentleman here, this gentleman, children, right? And here's what's up. Suddenly, they're not a big mass of faces. They were people. And I knew them, and I knew their story, and they were all professionals. They're all professionals. College-educated professionals. I'm like, wow, man. Like, this is real. They're real people. Just like, can I come back here really fast? Oh, man, dude. See these guys right here? I'll bet if I've met 10 of these men, I've met 500. If I've met 10, I've had a conversation with 500. They're real people with real names, just like each one of us is. Like, in this class, it's like there are a lot of people in here. So you're just, in some ways, for me, you're a face. I don't really know a few of you. I know your names, but I don't know, right? But you're real people with lives and stories. And so that matters. And so all over the world, we have this thing happening with people who are being impacted by this transformation that is going on, that are real people. And I'm not saying there's nothing to do about it, right? I'm not going to tell you, don't feel bad about it. I don't want you to feel bad. I don't want you to feel, what are you going to do? Like, go over there, what? Send them money? I get this guy right here, that guy right there. I have his email address. I could put you in contact with him. You could send him money. What's that going to do? That's not what it is. What it is think about it. What are you going to do? What do you want to do? What should you do? How should you think about this? This is big. We might be looking at the biggest thing that's ever happened to human beings ever on the face of the earth. This is big. How do you want to think about it? Do we want to be thoughtful? Do we want to be smart? Do we want to just bury our heads? Or do we want to really say no, I want to be really smart about this. I want to really give some thought to it. How am I going to do it? What am I going to do? Yeah, I still want a car, and I still want, my 5 kids, and I still want my house. Okay, great. But in the meantime, how are you going to think about it? Really, it's about being we're in college to be intellectual, to be more intellectual each day, to be smarter each day. And that's all it is. How are you going to think? If you sat down in front of I will tell you that if you were one of the students that were with us and sat down and talked to this gentleman right here, and he could tell you he's a computer engineer, and he told you his story, you would be sitting there going, your mind would be blown. Say, whoa. You wouldn't have answers. You just would know that you don't have answers. You'd know that you don't have, we know, the difference between me and many other people is I know I don't have answers. And the more complex the issue is, the fewer answers I have. I'm I don't know. But I feel really human in not having answers. I feel really human by taking issues like this and holding them and embracing them and just really just saying, no, I'm going to stare this thing in the face. And I'm going to be able to say, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to think about it, but I feel really alive and really human because I do that. And so I don't know, maybe that's just what I'm asking, that we all do at some level because it's going to affect us. So Hurricane Maria, the most devastating hurricane to rip across the Caribbean. It's not chance that we're seeing these really powerful typhoons and hurricanes. It's all been predicted, and we're going to see more. Just destroyed Puerto Rico. How many of you who's from Puerto Rico in here? Were you there at the time? Were you in Puerto Rico at the time? Were you there? Okay, so listen. And people are coming to the United States, but to the mainland. Puerto Rico is our 51st state for all intents and purposes, right? But people come to the mainland. They're going to come. People are going to come. It's going to happen. You can't stop it. And so the more things, transform, the more people are going to have to respond, and the more we're going to have to respond. So we can take this approach, and we can use words like infest, and these people are pouring into our country. It's an invasion. And we can hold a sign like that. But listen, that sign will not stop the refugees from climate transformation and potentially climate catastrophe. That sign will not stop it. That is not the answer. I don't know what the answer is, but it's not that sign. And so when we allow ourselves to get caught up by the rhetoric, you think right now we have to close our borders and I'm going to just follow the rhetoric. The rhetoric is not going to do what needs to be done in order to address this big thing that is coming at us. And maybe that's the first place to start. It's okay, don't buy into the rhetoric. And I could be all wrong. It may turn out tomorrow that everyone, or who knows, in a year, every one of the climate scientists are just it's been debunked as the greatest conspiracy since the protocols of the elders of Zion or something. I don't know, right? Something tells me probably not. So what are we going to do? That's not it. Arvin, let me show you something else. Let me give you something. How many people do you think want to come to the United States? What's your guess? Come on, everyone come up with a number in their head. There's 7.5 billion people in the world. Almost 330 million people living in the United States. How many people of the 7.5 2 more or less billion people in the world want to come to the U.S. What do you come up with a number? What percentage? Because we actually know. It's best that we could know, because Gallup did a poll. And Gallup went all over the world and spent a lot of money over the course of 2 years. And they do this every 6 or 8 years or so. And they collect data as best as they possibly can. Do you have a number in your head? How many people, what percentage want to come to the U.S.? Right? Like, what do you think, right? So here. First off, 750 million adults want to leave their country. If they could, if they have money and they had a visa and they could go where they wanted to go, they would leave their country. Even people in the poorest countries in the world, Bangladesh, Haiti. Like, if you've never been to some of these countries, have you never walked among people who are leading dignified lives, who love their country and love their culture and love their land, then you don't really understand that most people don't want to leave. Because it's where they are. Come on, man. It's where you live. It's awesome. Most people in Mexico don't want to leave Mexico. You know, you go down to Puebla, Mexico someday. And then Puebla is this beautiful little colonial town. And you sit in the Central Park. And every night in the Central Park, the whole town comes out. And they just start walking circles around the park. And the people, they're dressed up and they're just walking with their families. And they walk around. And you just sit and drink. You know, I'm just sitting, drinking a beer and watching and going, what an awesome town. When every night it's the same thing. And you're like, who would want to leave this? I'd never want to leave it. This is amazing. Why would you want to come to the United States? 750 million adults say that, yeah, if they could, if they had the money and they could and they had the ability, they would leave their land. Of the 750 million, 158 million said their first choice would be the United States. It's less than half of our population. So the whole world doesn't want to come to the United States. So whatever that is, 7.3 or 7.5 billion people minus 158 million. What is that? The rest of the world is quite happy to stay exactly where they are. So the world is not wanting. The whole thing isn't shutting down. They're not wanting to come. They're not going to want to. No, people are quite happy where they are. But they will come. And they will change. And they will figure out what they got to do. Because people will. When they're hungry enough and they're in need enough, they're going to happen. So listen, man. Let me finish. Hey, by the way, thanks. Like, thanks for paying attention. I never get to talk like this. I never get an opportunity to really put some ideas out because I don't take a whole, I don't know. Wait, hang on. I got one more thing I want to say. We have a couple minutes left. I want to say it. Hey, there's no need. I want to say it again. The really, really difficult conundrums. And why not just, like, we have this thing at World in Conversation where we talk about when you come up to a really difficult subject matter that's potentially really conflictual and problematic and it doesn't have answers. My wife has always talked about it as like steering into the curve. Steer into that. You know, like when you have a conflict with someone and I don't know, it's like you kind of want to avoid it or whatever. It's like, no, steer right into that, man. Like steer into it. Figure out what it is, right? And I guess there's a way in which I'm saying, what if we just steered into the curve? It's like, it's okay. It's not going to It's not going to change. Nothing's going to be different. Just like stare into it, man. Like grab onto it and see what's going to happen. And it's okay. It's awesome.